Welcome everybody to this event, and like Omar said, I've been asked to speak about fighting HIV and AIDS. And fighting HIV and AIDS was probably the last thing I had in my mind 30 years ago when I was a painter and decorator back in Luton in the UK, which is my hometown. So there I was in the middle of this superstore for people who do painting and decorating to buy equipment. And I thought, well, okay, I'll just phone my doctor and from the public phone in the middle of the store to check on some blood tests that I'd had done. And the results weren't really what I was expecting. And so I'm standing there in the middle of this store full of people on the public phone, and the doctor sort of blithely says to me, all your tests were fine except one. And I said, yeah, well, what one was that then? He said, well, you've got AIDS. And it's difficult really to describe what that feeling is like, apart from being told in a public place. But, you know, I don't know if you've ever experienced the colour draining out of you. And the colour just drained out of me. I know it did. And my legs started to turn to jelly, and my stomach started to churn. Because, you know, 30 years ago, everybody who got HIV and AIDS died. Nobody was living. There was no treatment. There was nothing. Not really any information for that matter. And so I sort of said, okay, well, I'll come in tomorrow morning then, because this was a Friday. And I put the phone down. Now, my working partner who was with me, he must have seen something. He must have recognized something that was going on, but he never said anything, so I didn't. And we got through the day. It was just as well, really. I had to go back to work, and because I was self-employed as a painter and decorator, and it's just as well I wasn't doing fine work, because I'd have been shit at it, really, to be honest. My hand would have been like this. I was so scared, I can't tell you. And but I had to go home at lunchtime because I had to tell my wife. And you know, I was a junkie. Not then, not when I was working, but before that, I was a junkie. And you know, as a junkie, you know, I've done a load of really awful things in my history. But there you go, that's life as a junkie. But telling my wife the result was absolutely the worst thing I've ever done in my life. I told her the result, and she just collapsed on the floor. She just fell down in a heap. And when I went to help her up, she just shrunk away from me. Because you have to remember, you know, we didn't know how catching this was. We didn't know what was going to happen. Well, eventually she got herself back together and got up. I had to go back to work, and she had to go out with our daughters, with her mother rather, to get our daughter's birthday present. How she managed that, I don't know, but she did. And then we spent the next 3 months just crying, really. Every evening, you know, we'd get through the day, we'd do the business, get the children off to bed, and then we'd just spend the rest of the time crying. We didn't know what else to do. We were just so scared. And it's quite difficult to explain how it just takes you over. And I think probably if it was left just to me, if I'd have been on my own, I probably wouldn't be here now. Because, you know, when you're a junkie and you have that history, things like abscesses, prison, violence, all sorts of things are part and parcel of life. They're just part of your life. So you tend, if you get a problem, you just shrug your shoulders and just let it happen. Well, my wife doesn't come from that, or didn't come from that background. And she wasn't prepared to just do that and shrug her shoulders. So she started trying to find out if there was any information at all. Well, eventually we heard about an organisation called Positively Healthy. Now, Positively Healthy used to produce a news sheet, what they called a newsletter, but it was just really 2 sides of A4. And in the bottom right-hand corner of this news sheet, there was a small advertisement for a series of seminars. And the title of the advertisement was called Learn to Love Your Virus. Now, really, I don't know what you're like, but if you see something like that and you've already been told you've got a virus that's killing you, and then somebody's telling you to learn to love it, You've really got to go and check it out. You just got to go and check it out. And we did. And it's the best thing I've ever done in my life. And again, there's no way I would be here if we hadn't have gone to those seminars. And what those seminars did, through meditation, through visualization, which doesn't suit everybody, but it suits me, and it opened up. It allowed me to tap into strengths that I just didn't know I had. Because I can remember sitting on a roof with my working partner, painting the gables, and we were talking about AIDS, because it was in the news, and you know, I remember saying to him that if I get that, I'll kill myself. And that's what I thought, you know, like a lot of people at the time. But this allowed me to tap into strengths that I just didn't know was there. And because there's a number of things that happen when you're diagnosed. And the first thing that happens is your future, which is way out there, suddenly comes there. It just disappears like that. It's different nowadays, somewhat, but this is 30 years ago. And the next thing you want to know is how long you've got. So on the Saturday morning, when I went to the doctor, that was the first question I asked. How long have I got? And the doctor was so relaxed. Well, of course he was relaxed. It wasn't happening to him, was it? So he was so relaxed about it. And he said to me, well, 12 months, 18 months if you're lucky. It's like, 18 months? Are you crazy? I don't feel like I'm dying. I just couldn't. It was so difficult to get it into my head that I would be dead in 12 to 18 months. And so we stopped going to see that doctor because he was no help at all. And then for the next 10, perhaps 14 or 15 years, I suppose, what we did through going to these seminars and visualization and meditation and looking after our diet and I still play football even now. I know it's hard to believe looking at me, but I still do. And so keeping up with the exercise, and I still carried on working. I didn't give up work, why would I, you know? And all the time I was building up a much more positive attitude. And it's really difficult to stay positive when you're HIV. I mean, that sounds like a bit of an oxymoron, but, you know, because every day I either hear a conversation, I see on the television, I listen to the radio, or I read in the newspaper that AIDS is going to kill me. And now, that is that's a massive negative message that gets driven home to people, to me and people like me, every single day. And you have to work incredibly hard to push that back, to have a positive attitude, to believe you have a future, to actually believe it's okay to sell your 2-bedroom house and get a 4-bedroom house because you're still going to be alive to pay the mortgage. And my wife and I actually had that conversation about whether we should actually move, even though we wanted to. You know, I've got 3 children. And you have to really take the bull by the horns and say, look, I'm going to have a life, however long that is, and I'm not going to allow HIV to control my life. Now, having said that, 30 years ago I was a painter and decorator. Now I do this. So it's changed my life completely. So basically I've failed, really, but the good thing is I'm still alive. That's the thing. That's the most important thing. And so, like I said, we had 3 children, and we had to think about telling the children. Well, we decided not to. And we decided not to because we wanted the children to grow up without the extra baggage. And I personally wanted the children to love me, or not, because they love me or not. Not because, oh, well, Dad's not well, he might not be around very long, so we'll be good. And it worked, because they were all shits, quite frankly. It absolutely worked. It was a really good strategy, and they grew up completely naturally and gave us hell the whole time, you know, like you do. And but eventually I started to get unwell. First of all, I got oral thrush. Now, I don't know if anybody here has had thrush, but oral thrush is disgusting. It is so foul, and it makes you feel dreadful. Your mouth furs up, you get all this white gunk stuff comes out the side of your mouth. It is disgusting. So I got rid of that, and then I got shingles. And shingles is a form of the herpes virus, but I got it on my face, just down the side here. Well, that wasn't too bad. It's painful, but it wasn't too bad, and the drugs got rid of it. But then it came back, and I got it right across my eye, all up into my head, and it comes out as a scab. And I mean, you can lose your sight. Fortunately, I didn't, but you can do. And it's so painful. And the tablets didn't get rid of it, so I had to go into hospital. And my wife and I thought, well, maybe this is going to be the future now. In and out of hospital, you know, periods of wellness and then getting ill and in and out of hospital. Plus, I'd started to lose weight. Now you can see, you know, I can't afford to lose much weight. If I lose a few kilos, I disappear. So, you know, and it started to show. So my consultant, Brian Gazzard at the Chelsea and Westminster Hospital, we was having conversations, and he was putting a lot of pressure on me to go on treatment. Well, that's easier said than done. First of all, I wasn't going to go on a singles therapy AZT, because by this time, you know, I'd learned to read the research reports, and I knew that AZT didn't work. On its own, it doesn't work. It's only good as a facilitator for other drugs to help those other drugs cross the blood-brain barrier. On its own as a therapy, it's rubbish, and it doesn't work. In fact, it kills more people than it ever saved. But by this time, after 15 years, there was new drugs come on the market, ones that did work. So my doctor was putting a lot of pressure on me, because by now I didn't have an immune system. My T cells were 0, and I had a viral load of over 2 million, which sounds like a lot, but you know, I know people with a 20 million viral load, so mine wasn't as bad as some. But the lack of immune system was quite dangerous, because you can get all sorts of things. You know, you can get brain disease, you can get pneumonia, a viral pneumonia. There's lots of things if you don't have an immune system that, you know, people's bodies just generally fight, which mine wouldn't. But it took me 12 months. It took me 12 months to make my mind up to go on treatment. Now, you might think in that situation, that was bloody stupid. But it's important to do it for the right reasons. You know, being HIV, living with HIV without treatment, and just using your will and having a positive attitude and diet and stuff is one thing. Being HIV positive and having to take pills every day is a different place to be altogether. It's a different psychological and emotional place to be. And you have to be 95% compliant, which means over a month you can miss 1, maybe 2 doses. Beyond that, you're not going to get the maximum out of the treatment. So that's quite a lot of discipline you have to have. And I had to be prepared, had to be sure that I was prepared to keep that discipline, and also that I wasn't going to put all my faith in a bottle of pills, because eventually the pills will fail. Because if they didn't, they'd be a cure, and they're not a cure. You know, they just mean I can manage this disease. So then my first combination was 4 drugs, which was in total, once they decided to get rid of the liquid and turn it into tablets, it was 28 tablets twice a day. That was the first one. And you had to eat copious amounts and drink loads of water. And that's quite tough to do, actually, twice a day, 28 tablets. It was worse when one of the drugs, ritonavir, was liquid, because now I've kicked pharmacy windows in just to get bottles of medicine, because if you drink 2 or 3 of them, you get a nice buzz off it. This is the foulest. Has anybody ever had Vicks Mennonite? No? Vicks Mennonite is disgusting. This made Vicks Mennonite just taste like syrup. Ritonavir is the foulest substance you will ever put in your body. I promise you this. It is so disgusting. My little grandson, when I used to take it and he was around, he used to set out the bowl of sugar, the pot of yogurt, and the glass of orange juice. Because even going to the fridge, you know when you get that shivering in your back, and you go like that, I feel it now. That's what it was like, because I knew what it was going to taste like. And I had to take just two caps. I'd take the 2 caps, spoonful of sugar, drink the orange.